Kent. Next up for 7 minutes, Mr. Angus.
Well, thank you. When I was elected in 2004, I came out of the music business at a time when what was happening in Silicon Valley was turning the music industry upside down, and certainly the massive losses in recording revenues were noted. And there was a lot of pressure at that time here on the Hill to bring in legislation to regulate, to try and limit digital growth. And I was very much against that because I saw the potential, even though it was upending the music industry, it was upending, now it's upended newspapers, it's upended so many stable sources because of the potential for new ideas and for development. But what we've seen is that so many of these young startups have become monopolistic giants. The idea that there would be a whole series of competing, for example, platforms have disappeared. So my concern is, looking at it in 2018, Facebook has morphed from a place where you meet your old friends from high school into the single defining source of information for the vast majority of people. It is the news media for vast majority of people, whether it is false news, Russian troll bot news, or CTV. And so when Mr. Tarian came here the other day, he said that he needed the tools to be able to go in without permission and investigate or audit Facebook on privacy. But he also raised the larger issue that there's Competition Act issues. There's all series of effects that Facebook now has that has not really been looked at. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Chan, if a federal auditor for digital platforms was brought forward who had the power to investigate these complaints to ensure compliance, what would Facebook think of that?
Sir, are you referring to privacy, or are you referring
well,
to
Mr. Tarian mentioned privacy, but obviously Facebook affects so much more than privacy. It affects the news, it affects information. Now it's affecting elections and whether or not elections can be undermined, as in the United States or in the Brexit vote, whether or not we need to have an independent auditor, because I don't see how we can regulate something as big as Facebook when you can move 1.5 billion users from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to move around laws. Would you support an auditor?
I think that already there are many different instruments that already exist. I think the Privacy Commissioner is investigating. I think that he's already very much seized with his existing abilities under mandate or under statute to understand and get to the bottom of what he has.
But I guess the question is, are you a utility now? You've moved from being a really cool space, but are you basically a public utility that everyone relies on?
Sure. If I may, we are a platform where there, as you point out, there are 23 million Canadians on the service, and we take that responsibility very seriously. I think that may be sort of, sir, the core of your concern is that whether or not we take that responsibility seriously, and we absolutely do. If I may, look at just one that you're alluding to, the news issue, which again I'm very much seized with working with the broader ecosystem. There are indeed 7 million Canadians every day who get at least some part of their news from Facebook. And we understand that's a very significant responsibility. We understand that we are a part of that news ecosystem.
Okay, so sorry, because I don't... Yes, I don't want to get cut off with votes in the House. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude here. But let's just zero in on that issue of news. The question of Myanmar, where Myanmar has become, Facebook was the sole source of news for a vast majority of people in Myanmar. And that The Guardian and international organizations said that the use and misuse of that platform definitely played a huge role in the horrific genocide that we're seeing in Myanmar and the rise of hate, because Facebook was the primary source of news. And the UN investigator, Yang Tse Lee, said that Facebook had become a beast in Myanmar. I mean, no one thought that when we started to exchange information that it could be taken over by haters and be used in such a manner, but it has been. So how do we prevent that atrocity from happening again?
Sir, so I, of course, would not want to speak to the specific details from another part of the world, but I can tell you, if I may, about our global approach to this. As I mentioned earlier, we do have community standards that apply globally. Hate speech, incitement to violence, terrorist content, those sorts of things I think we can all agree should not be on the service. And we do take them down proactively where we can with artificial intelligence, which, to be very clear, is not a panacea, and it's getting better, but we would not sort of say that this is going to be always perfect. We also do take down content that's reported to us, and I think we try to do this in all the languages in which we operate around the world.
Okay, I guess because the issue I see, and again, I'm on Facebook all the time. My wife says I'm married to it, your platform, for better or for worse. I always see anti-Muslim, pro-Russian, pro-Putin, pro-Assad comments. It's derailed comments. I mean, and I'm always trying to deal with this, but that's small potatoes compared to what's happened in Myanmar, and where Alan Davis, who's one of the people looking at that genocide, said things have gone so far in Myanmar right now. I don't know how Mark Zuckerberg can sleep. If Facebook has any conscience, they would be pouring a good percentage of their fortunes into reversing the chaos that they have created. You have an enormous power with your corporation, an enormous power. It's unprecedented in history to have Facebook identified as one of the key sources of such horrific killings. I would think that Facebook would be so outraged that you would be begging to come to committee, not being asked to come to committee, to say, we will make sure that this will never happen again. So where is that assurance?
Well, again, sir, I would just say respectfully, in Canada, I will circulate documents that show that before this became, before issues generally became public issues, we have long been at work with the right authorities to get things right. And so, again, I could just point back to the letter I have here from the Commissioner of Canada Elections as congratulating us for our efforts. For the
I know,
last
but we're
election.
talking about the power of one platform to cause horrific harm and death and an unprecedented massacre. I mean, that's an incredible power. My question is, as a corporate entity with Facebook's response that we've heard this morning, are you equipped to deal with this kind of power, given the potential for harm as well as potential for good?
Well, we understand very much where you're coming from, sir. We understand our responsibilities. I think, as I indicated in the opening statement earlier, we did not take a broad enough view about our responsibilities. It's not enough just to build tools that people can use. We have to ensure that they're not abused, to your point. I can only say that we have made big commitments to grow our safety team, going from 10,000 to 20,000 people in the next year, which is a significant undertaking for a company of a certain size in terms of FTEs, in terms of full-time employees. And we will continue to do more. So both on the technical side, which we spent some time talking about, but also on just having enough people on the ground to deal with all of these types of issues. I certainly, sir, would never want to say that we therefore can say that we are perfect and that we'll get it right tomorrow. But we are certainly on a journey, and I guess the point of my intervention was just to hopefully underscore that we have been on this journey for the last year or more now. We see much more work to be done. I want to assure you that we will do all that we can in Canada, but also elsewhere around the world to ensure that that abuses do not happen.
Thank you, Mr. Angus and Mr. Chan. Just wanted